Welcome back to the program, everybody. Today, I am pleased to have with me Bernie Haffey. Bernie and I have gone back at least 25 years in working in healthcare. And Bernie, you're now a consultant and you have a very busy, thriving practice. So first of all, welcome to the program. And please just give us a little background on how you got to where you are today with HPMS.
Thanks, Sharif. Well, a little known fact is that I started life after college as a physics teacher. And then from there, went to business school and started a corporate career with Hewlett Packard. But it was kind of mid-career that I learned the principles of high performance from Dick Palermo, the former number 2 at Xerox. And that's been a gift for me as an executive and now as a consultant for now over 20 years.
Well, I was able to work alongside you with one of the early projects. And even before that, I was competing with you on one of your projects with HPMS, and I saw the results, really witnessed firsthand what high performance management can do. So give us a little overview. What is HPMS all about?
Well, it's a system, which refers to the fact that it's not a process. It's a set of processes that are connected through feedback loops. And so if you have that in mind, you can sort of see your business as a system, as an organism even, rather than as individual functions that may or may not be working together.
So why do businesses and why do medical practices need help? In other words, why do they pick up the phone and call you?
Well, a good example would have been is Intralaze. When you and I were working together around 2002, 2003, the company was stalled in market adoption. That's a common problem that we face. And we apply a structured problem-solving process to problems and opportunities. And I think that's one of the differentiators in HPMS. People that don't use structured problem solving will start with a plan, and that's usually limiting in its effectiveness and in how it fits into the overall system, if you will.
So you say that it's a mistake to start with a plan, and sometimes those plans can be a 2-inch thick binder, right? Depending on the size of the organization. What's the alternative approach? What's the right way to do it?
Well, the right way, in our view, is to form a team, a diverse, cross-functional, cross-layer team, to clearly state the problem or the opportunity in a very focused way that everyone understands what that team is solving for. In many cases, we see companies fail right there by scoping the project too wide, by not clearly communicating and aligning the team to what they're solving for. And so in the case that we're chatting about it at Intralaze, the problem was one of market adoption, straight up. Surgeons were using the laser in about 50% of available LASIK cases, and that was a big problem and was going to be limiting for our company going forward.
Well, and through a series of surveys to identify what customers really wanted and what their pain points were, and these were the early customers, the first 20 to 30, you were able to identify what problem, if solved, would allow them to be more satisfied and to actually use the devices more. And we know that went from less than 1% market share in 2003, the Intralaze device, to now 60, 70% in the US. So it was clearly a success story. You've done the same thing with big companies for sure. And you've also done this with medical practices. So yes. What's an example of a medical practice you've worked with, and what was the problem we faced, and how did HPMS help crack that problem?
Yeah. Well, Vance Thompson Vision in Sioux Falls is one of the 2 medical practice clients that we've engaged. And when we did their patient satisfaction surveys, we noticed that the number 1 complaint, the most significant complaint or opportunity for improvement, was around wait time and total time. And so we attacked that with a lot of focus and with tools, and made dramatic improvements in patient flow and total time and in wait time.
Can you kind of give us a sense of what they were like before in terms of total time, wait time, and what they're like, now or after?
Yeah, well, prior to applying these tools and deploying a team, The average cataract workup was about 3 hours. Following the effort, we reduced that to about 45 minutes.
Wow. Wow. I mean, that's incredible. Cut it by more than 2/3.
That's right.
And what about, were you able to tackle the like arrival time, the time having to spend before they could get seen?
Absolutely. I mean, when you look at total time, it's really from the time they arrive in the parking lot to the time that they leave again. And you've got to look at all of those steps, look at bottlenecks, look at points in the process that can be improved. Unnecessary steps are generally considered waste. So it's about leaning out that process, lining it up in a way that the process flows.
Well, one of the things that I've learned from you, from observing you and speaking with you, is that waiting itself, just the act of waiting, is a form of waste.
That's right.
Right. And why is that?
Well, if you think about a manufacturing line, right, and an early station overproduces a certain number of parts, and those parts build up as inventory, waiting for the next station to process them. That's cash. All of that inventory waiting to be processed is cash tied up in inventory that could be used for a lot of other things that are much more interesting for the business, like R&D, for example.
Right.
And so
let's just, take this by analogy and move it into the medical practice.
Right.
There's patients that are waiting to be seen in what used to be very crowded waiting rooms, right? I hate that term, as you know. What do are you saying they're like inventory?
Yes, you could think of them as parts, right? And if they're piling up at different places in your line, you've got a poor process.
Yeah.
And so ideally, a patient should arrive and be pulled through in a smooth fashion, not waiting a significant number of minutes in between steps, right? So that's just a nice flow of that patient or that part in this analogy through your practice, and with the goal of, as in the case of Toyota Production System, zero inventory.
Correct.
So zero patients waiting.
Right.
That's perfection.
That is perfection, and I think it actually ties into the ultimate in customer experience, which would be a transformational experience. And in medicine, really, it is that patient. You called them inventory or a part, but if you think about it, you're taking a patient who has glasses and moving them to no glasses, who has a big tummy and moves them to a smaller tummy, or a flatter chest to a bigger chest, whatever it is they are going to pay for, right? Not seeing well with their current lenses because of cataract, to new incredible lenses that can see at all distances. The patient is transformed. And in that, it actually fits with your analogy very well. So that kind of makes me happy as a guy who focuses on patient experience. What are some of the main causes of wait, that you see commonly, that in those several practices, but could apply to any medical practice?
Yeah, I think the first one that we see a lot is bottlenecks in the process. In order to really understand those, we recommend practices process map. Not every process, but let's say the 20% of the processes that represent 80% of the patient volume, you should really sit down and map those out and look for unnecessary steps and bottlenecks in that process. Another big one is variance. And if nominally it takes let's say 40 minutes to process a patient, plus or minus 10 minutes, that's a manageable variance. But if the variance can go beyond plus or minus 10 minutes, let's say plus or minus 30 minutes, you can just imagine how that creates problems upstream or backstream for the practice.
And it makes it very frustrating for the front desk and for the staff people who are trying to move people through, and of course for the doctors as well, who they're just working as fast as they can. So what you're doing is saying, almost like it's like that old infomercial, stop the insanity, right? Take a look. What was her name? We'll think of her name in a minute. But take a look, take an honest look at what you're doing, And what I've known about you is you're all about data and making data-driven decisions as opposed to emotional decisions or anecdotal decisions or a decision because of the last patient that got really angry at us, something like that. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's data and fact-based. It's not anecdotally based, and it's also team-based. The best improvement ideas come from those that are closest to the activity. So the technicians and staff that are and the doctors that are working with these patients are going to, when in a group and properly facilitated, they're going to come up with the ideas for how to improve the process.
Right. Well, and Bernie, by the way, Susan Powder, that's what my engineer just told me. Susan Powder was her name. So there you go. Stop the insanity and start bringing discipline. And, the benefits of doing this, Bernie, just kind of summarize. What happens when, you get the team engaged to solve the problem?
Well, number one is employee engagement goes up. So the employees are more satisfied. They're working in an environment that has less waste, less rework. Their work is better. It flows better. In fact, the job of management is to improve the way the work gets done. We generally can't do the work, but we can absolutely improve the way it gets done. And I think the biggest benefit back to the patient and the customer is that it's a better experience, and that patient's going to be more likely to recommend a business or a practice to a qualified other friend. And that in turn is going to drive more customers or patients to your door, which will in turn benefit the bottom line. And so that all those connections are critical, I think, in terms of understanding the purpose or the why behind patient wait time reduction.
Well, you helped show everybody at Intralays that customer satisfaction does not necessarily translate to that surgeon being willing to recommend the technology to his or her peers, right? That's that they don't always match up. So it's not, I think you're saying it's not satisfaction we want to go after. It's this one question, which some people call the net promoter score. It's the willingness to recommend that doctor, that practice, that procedure, that business to their friends, family, and colleagues, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
So Bernie, I appreciate that you were willing to do an advanced read on the book, Beyond Bedside Manner. Appreciate that. And I know, you're a busy guy, so I don't expect you've gotten through it, but as you were thumbing through it, was there one insight that kind of caught your attention?
Well, your passion for blowing up the waiting room. I think you have a chapter with that title. A little controversial perhaps for some people, but the whole notion of waiting or having a room set up for people to wait in is something that you're passionate about getting rid of, and I think we are too. You combine that passion and your personal understanding of the practice with some process, you're going to get breakthrough results. People plus process. Yep.
Well, you're absolutely right. And, we've talked about the book offline in multiple conversations now because of our collaboration between you, myself, and I'm going to call him like the ninja time waste killer expert, Louis Bowing. I mean, he's incredible. Yes, so for everybody listening, Bernie and I and Louis have put together a program. We're calling it eliminatethewaitcom. And by the time you see this, it should be up. You should be able to go to that website and be able to download the first free mini module to help you get started on this path of getting rid of your waiting room, whether you physically get rid of it, as I recommend in the book, so that we have that ideal state. People arrive and they just go right on in, or you figure out that what you really need to do is repurpose that room and not just in name, but in function, but still work on crushing this down. We think this program's for you. Bernie, any closing comments or thoughts?
Thanks again for having me, Sharif. It's always a pleasure.
You bet. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Until next time, I'm Sharif Madavi, and as always, be safe, wash your hands, and love your pets. Stay tuned for another episode coming soon.